Corrective actions, preventive actions, CAPA. Yeah, you're familiar with this technology, aren't you? You use it every day. But some of you who are a bit younger than me, as probably most of you, might be surprised to learn that this is a relatively new term. It was introduced with the ISO 9001 quality series in 1994. Now, I know, yes, that seems a long time ago to some of you, but for me, that's relatively recently. And it was then used in the Pharmaceutical Quality Management System Guideline, ICHQ-10, in 2008. That's only 12 years ago. That's not long at all. There are some problems with the terminology, however, and I will talk about that. Firstly, there is a general assumption, usually on the side of the management team, that CAPAs only apply to your deviations and from our quality system. And secondly, with the confusion about what happens and the difference between a corrective action and a preventive action. I'm sure you've all come across this confusion. So hopefully today, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the process of managing your corrective and preventive actions and trying to clarify this difference, but I'm not really going to harp on about the difference between corrective actions and preventive actions, and you'll see why in a moment. So, do I still think we should be using the term CAPA? I actually think it's going to change. It's not going to take a very short time. It's going to take a long time. We're not very flexible in pharma, are we? We do tend to take a while to make these changes, and we're going, I believe, to probably use something like quality system action management, and you'll see why I say this in a moment. The other things that we're going to cover today, we're going to cover the scope of your action management system. I'm going to give you a process overview, how I think you should be managing each stage of your action management. Your best practice, and I've got some hints and tips for you. I haven't got everything. What we have here is a very short amount of time to give you a lot of information. And what you will find is that with our series of workshops, we're able to go into much more detail into all of your quality system management elements. And we have a whole series of workshops that fit together really well and give you in-depth practice and practical application of these areas. We're going to have a look at how you document your corrective and preventive actions, and again, documenting things really well is going to help you enormously. Scheduling and monitoring, most people don't do this very well at all, so some hints and tips here for you. And effectiveness checks, how many of you struggle with your effectiveness checks, and then a quick summary at the end. Okay, so we don't have time in this quick webinar to go into all of these in detail. It is going to be an overview for you. Don't forget to sign up at the end for the workshops to learn more detail. Remember, I mentioned this corrective action, preventive action, and the confusion between the two. Now, what I want to make sure of is that you are all clear on what we mean when we talk about these actions. And correction is an important point here. We do want to make sure that any short-term corrections are very clear and recorded as we need them to be. So when you are writing things down, try and make sure that you are clear whether something is a correction or a corrective action. And we'll talk about the actual definition in a little more detail later. Then we have corrective action, which is an action required to prevent something that has already gone wrong from happening again. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily need to mean that it hasn't gone wrong in a particular area. And this is where so many, even experts, get confused here. They will say, well, it says it's a corrective action only in the area that it's gone wrong. And then if we go and look at a different area, let's say our compression machine in area A has had an issue, and we put that right, that's our correction, and then we put in some more corrections in area B and C. They're the same type of compression machine. That is still a corrective action because you know that it's gone wrong in machine A, and therefore correcting it in machine B and C are still corrective actions. They're not preventive because it has already gone wrong, and this is where the confusion lies. So preventive action, really according to ICH Q10 and ISO 9001, is very much it hasn't gone wrong at all. We found this through a risk management proactive approach, and we think it could go wrong, and we're going to prevent it ever going wrong at all. However, what you will find if you have read in detail ICH, not ICH, I'm lying, ISO 9001-2015 is that they no longer use the wording preventive action. And I really urge you to go and read this document and think about the implications for future iterations of ICH Q10, because they are now focusing on the wording continuous improvement. So now you see why I think the wording of CAPA is going to become redundant, because everybody gets confused. It really doesn't help the fact that, does it matter what you actually call it? No, it doesn't. And the fact that as long as we have the actions in place, why would we need to differentiate them? Yeah. So continuous improvement is generally what comes out of our risk management activities, and therefore all we need to do is just make sure we've captured them. We've got actions. Yeah. So in terms of ISO 9001-2015, you will see the wording continuous improvement. Of course, ICH hasn't caught up yet, but I would imagine that it will do when and if it gets updated. Now, the scope of your corrective action, preventive action, or action management program, as we're going to call it. As I mentioned previously, many people think that these only come from deviations, and I'm sure you're not one of those. You take actions from all sorts of places. Can you type into the chat what quality systems you might think generate actions for your quality system, and see if your suggestion comes up on the next slide. Okay. So what is the scope of your action management process? Well, great answer, Helen. Issue management. Yeah, your deviations, your non-conformities, lovely. Auditing. Yeah, Helen came up with auditing. Quality risk management. I've got a couple of those already. Isabella, thank you. Yeah. Change control. Okay. Change controls will produce actions, lots and lots of actions. Yeah, I'm loving all of these. These are great. Craig, brilliant. Yes, I taught you well. Product quality review, amazing. And then hopefully you got all of those. Okay, but what about these systems? I'm seeing some of these already. Everything that has influence on organization, QMS. Validation and qualification. Now, in these systems, you have an internal deviation process, but you may want to include the actions in your normal action management process to make sure that you are including them. Supply chain and outsourcing, regulatory and authorization management, yeah? And lots of you already said management review. I'm seeing complaints, I'm seeing lots of different things here. These systems are not always at the forefront of your mind in the QA department. They might be administered by other areas in the organization. However, it is still crucial to capture any and all actions that are generated and ensure they're completed to the schedule. Okay.